Elevate TV, advancing kingdom lifestyle.
Good morning Kenya, good morning East Africa, good morning Africa and the rest of the world. I'm glad you tuned in this Friday morning. Again, we are back, and you know how we do it. We talk about issues that affect the church. As long as they're current issues, no matter how sensitive they are, we will talk about it. I am your host, Apostle John Wesley, and I'm glad to have you. Remember, we are live, and I'm going to ask you to share this stream on Facebook. Share it on YouTube. Let your friends know that Apostle John Wesley is live this Friday morning. Please grab yourself a cup of coffee, cup of tea, even as you chillax and as we have this conversation about the church. Today we're talking about church regulation. Remember last Friday we talked about it from clergy's perspective. And this morning I'm excited to let you know we're going to have a conversation from a legal perspective. And I have with me a wonderful minister of God, a servant of God, a child of God. Her name is Joy. She told me before the show that she does not like titles, but I'm going to allow herself to introduce herself. Welcome, Joy.
Thank you so much.
Yes, how have you been?
I'm very well, thank you.
Would you mind telling the viewers your full names, what you do, who you are?
At least missing Geni kwa issue, so most of them have had my name before. My name is Joy Brenda Masinde, or Joy Mdivo, because that is how I prefer to be known, as Joy Mdivo. Married, love the Lord, serving the Lord. I'm an advocate by training and by profession. And yeah, I'm glad to be here today.
Amen. You had it for yourself, and she has a long list of qualifications, but we're not going to be talking about that today.
Amen.
But trust me, she's well able to handle the topic that we are looking at. Kindly share this stream. Let everybody know that we are talking about church regulation from a legal perspective. Are you a pastor? Are you a bishop? Are you an apostle? You need to hear this. Joy is loaded with some perspectives that will really help the body of Christ. Well, we're going to start right into it, and we would like to begin from the Genesis. Now, Joy, the heat of the conversation in the last few weeks has been about church regulation, and we already know there's a task force in place led by Reverend Mutava Musimi to just try and look at how to regulate the church. Where did the rain start beating us?
Well, first and foremost, I think we've in previous conversations, one of the things that I have always said is that we live in a thriving democracy.
Yes.
Now, a democracy is the system of government that we use today, but it's not the best system of government to have.
Yes.
Because the majority always have their say, but oftentimes what the majority say may not be what is best for everybody. Now, why I start from there is because in the year 2008, 2009, when we had the run-up to the 2010 vote for the new constitution,
yes,
the church was saying no to the constitution, the proposed constitution then, and now it's our current constitution. And people just knew about Catholic courts and about gay marriages and abortion. But there's one major reason why we were saying no. And it was, for me, it was the main reason why the church was saying no.
Yes.
And many even in the church didn't get to understand this. Was because what we had in the previous constitution as protection of religious freedom,
yes,
was more robust than what was being proposed in the new constitution. So just allow me some latitude to read for the sake of, so that you understand.
Yeah, please go ahead.
In the previous constitution, in section 78,
yes,
in the constitution that we repealed, this was the freedom of conscience. So everybody had a person, no one could be hindered from the enjoyment of his freedom of conscience. For purposes of that freedom, it included the freedom of thought, of religion, to change his religion or belief, either alone or in community in others, in public or in private, to manifest and propagate his religion or belief in worship, in teaching, in practice, and in observance. That's one thing that was constitutionally guaranteed.
Yes.
You could have a religion, you could change it. You could have a belief, you could propagate it. You could worship in private, you could worship in public. You could manifest it in any way. This is section 78, subsection 1. Subsection 2 is every religious community was entitled at its own expense to establish and maintain places of education and manage the place of education which it wholly maintains, and no such community would be prevented from providing religious instruction for persons in that community in the course of any education provided at that place. Yes. Meaning, if you're a religious institution and you set up a place of education, you are allowed, as long as you're fully sponsoring it, to propagate your religion in that space. And so I went to Catholic school. I had to go to Mass.
Yes.
Because the Catholics were sponsoring my education. Then they were allowed to propagate their religion to me while I was in that school, and that was protected within the law.
Yes.
Then, except with his own consent, or if he's a minor, the consent of the guardian, no person attending such place of education would be required to receive that. So if you needed to opt out, you could opt out.
Yes.
Nobody would be compelled to take oath which is contrary to religion or their belief. And nothing contained or done under the authority of any law was held to be inconsistent with this particular section, as long as it was not in the it was in the interest of defense, public safety, public order, public morality, or public health.
Yes.
So those are the only spaces where the government will come in to curtail our religious freedom.
Yes.
That is in the interest of defense, public safety, public order, public morality, or public health. And for protecting the rights of other persons, you could observe religion, but without unsolicited intervention of members of other religion. They could, like, if you are a Christian and you're worshiping,
yes,
members of another religion could not come and interrupt the religious observance. So this it's a long, I'm not even done with it, but in the interest of time, let me leave it there. You have an idea of how robust,
yes,
the protection and the propagation of religion was in the old constitution. Now allow me to read to you what we have currently in our new constitution, which now, what we are calling now the 2010 constitution.
Yes.
So every person has the right of freedom of conscience, religion, thought, belief, and opinion. Every person has the right, individually or in community with others, in public or in private, to manifest any religion, belief through worship, practice, teaching, observance, including an observance of a day of worship.
Okay.
Now, this is the only article that has given you a freedom, and in the very same article goes on to curtail it. And this is what it says. A person may not be denied access to any institution, employment facility, or the enjoyment of any right because of a person's belief or religion. And a person shall not be compelled to act or engage in any act that is contrary to a person's belief or religion. And that's it.
Are you serious?
I'm very serious.
That's it?
That's it. Where did the rain start beating us? The moment we lost the religious freedoms and protections that we had in the previous constitution and got into this new constitution, the church was, religious institutions, not just the church, were left basically walking naked. Because it tells you you can believe what you want, but now the express right to propagate your religion has been taken away.
Yes.
Your express right to sponsor an institution and protect it and use that institution to raise leaders of caliber in that religion to the world has been. So for example, Daystar University,
yes,
the vision was to raise Christian leaders in this country, to raise thought leaders in this country. So for you to join Daystar, you needed to have a testimony, your pastor needed to recommend you, because you were keen on raising Christian leaders. Once constitution of the 2010 constitution passed, you cannot stop somebody from joining an institution just because they're not of the same religion. And the very article that gives us a right of freedom of conscience says we cannot discriminate on the basis of religion. So that meant basically institutions like Daystar became like public universities. I told you I went to Catholic school. It was, yes, Catholic sponsored.
Yes. And
the sisters were very strict on what we could and could not do. I go to my former school now and it's become like any other government national school.
Yes.
It is full of girls from here to next year. The levels of discipline and the strictures that the nuns had put in place have all but been removed. And so we've come to a place where that which we had started and which was constitutionally protected now is not. So now we've gotten to a place where religious institutions are fair game. Whereas before we were allowed to be sort of, quote unquote, it was like an exclusive club. You had the right of admission. And if we didn't want to associate with you, we could tell you, you know what, your kind is not needed here. Now we can't do that anymore. There's a space where we were allowed to use our influence to propagate religion. People had the right to change religions. Now we're in a situation where it's not constitutionally protected that people can change religion. So even proselytizing or evangelizing or doing stuff like that, right now we are still doing it because we're in the dispensation where this is what we are used to. But there'll come a time when somebody will tell you, look, if you want to believe, you believe, but don't tell me what you think I ought to believe. Now what happens? The Great Commission.
Wow. Joy, you talked about Daystar as an example.
Yes.
Assuming that Daystar is run by, it's a parachurch organization or run by a faith-based organization. Let's say, for example, a church has a school or has a hospital or is running an institution where they need to employ. Are you saying that someone professing another faith can apply for a job and I'm not allowed to deny them the opportunity to serve in that institution? Is that what you're saying?
If you strictly apply the law, yes. If somebody knows that the only reason why they did not get the job is because of their religious persuasion, they could sue you for religious discrimination. And the Article 32 says you cannot discriminate on the basis of religion. Find another reason to disqualify them. You cannot use religion.
Oh my goodness. So in black and white, Joy, do we have religious freedom or not?
In my opinion, we do not. What we do have is a provision to believe what we want to believe, but how we express it right now, as far as I'm concerned, is not as free as we were before. What we're enjoying is just that inertia from what we've always had. But when there comes a Pharaoh who did not know Joseph and decides to apply the law strictly as it is, you'll find our religious freedom will be much like what you have in the West.
Yes.
Where as long as you're believing, you're fine, but don't tell us what to do. And ironically, other people of other ideologies can tell you what to do, but you cannot tell them back. So for example, if you look at what is going on with this LGBTQ argument in other countries, if Christians say that men having sex with men is sin, that is deemed to be hate speech.
Yes.
But for a person in the LGBTQ community to say that people who do not believe in gays having relationships are actually out of order. You cannot say, by the way, that is my belief. Why are you discriminating against me? So it doesn't flow both ways.
Okay.
So if you tell them it's wrong, you're hateful. But if they tell you that you're wrong, they're not being hateful. They're only trying to enlighten you because you're ignorant.
So we were busy shouting about Catholic courts, shouting about abortion, shouting about homosexuality. But what they sneaked behind is they basically curtailed our freedom of religion.
Yes, and the thing that I feel sad about is that we tried to do civic education as much as possible, but somehow we didn't reach everybody. And there are places where we reached, and even if the pastors listened to you, they had other persuasions at the time. There were other things that were at play.
Yes.
So that is water under the bridge. But that is what, like you asked, where did it start beating us? That was the genesis of what we have today, the genesis of the problem that we have today.
So 2010, we passed the new constitution, and this becomes the root cause of the problem. Fast forward, what has really provoked the conversation on church regulation? Now that we have had this mutilation of the law, as so to speak, what now then began to provoke this conversation about church regulation? Okay,
let me dial you back, kidogo. Let's not yet fast forward.
Yes.
We had the terrorist attack in 1998, was it?
Yes.
And from that time, terrorism and religious extremism became a buzzword. So from way back in 1998, we've been trying to find a way of protecting religious freedom while weeding out extremism in religion.
Yes.
And this is something that has chewed the head of the government for a long, long time. And unfortunately, we've not yet been able to crack the code. So what happened in 2010 actually was an attempt at that curtailment, because it was felt that religious institutions had too much freedom and too much latitude, that is why they were able to, because at that time, if I think back to the 90s, if you were a pastor, you could bring in equipment. As long as it's for the work of the ministry, it would come in duty free. We could bring in like humanitarian assistance. So people would bring in instruments, would bring clothes and books and stuff like that. As long as it was being used for social advancement work, it would come in duty free. And the religious institutions misuse that a lot for, people use that to bring in equipment that now they put in shops in Luthuli and stuff.
Yeah.
So we had started abusing it kiasi. But 1998 sort of came to a head that it can get to a level where it kills fellow Kenyans. And so there's been that, people have been looking for that way to curtail this. And section 78 at that time was always an impediment, because our latitude was we had fairly big elastic latitude. Now come to this new constitution. How it works is the constitution is like the foundation and the pillars.
Yes.
Then the statutes is what you build in the walls and becomes the rooms and becomes the rest of the house. And so one of the things that I have been trying to do, and the churches have been trying to do, the Evangelical Alliance and the other umbrella bodies, is to try and get a specific act, a bill of parliament passed into a law that deals with religious institutions.
Yes. Because
with the religious freedom that we had in the previous constitution, churches were being registered under the Societies Act.
Yes.
And that was fine, because that was registration for you to get a certificate of registration, but you could operate under whatever, because your rights and privileges were in some place else.
Yes.
Now we're in a situation where the constitution doesn't give us as much freedom and as much latitude, and the Societies Act also doesn't give us much anyway.
Yes.
And so if the Registrar of Society wakes up one day and says, all societies from tomorrow, all their members have to be wearing yellow, even churches, because we are societies, we're in the same blanket, we all have to start wearing yellow, because that is the new direction from the Registrar of Societies. And we realized it was affecting stuff that we do. So, for example, some of our sacraments, for example, marriage.
Yes.
Ideally, in any institution, in any country, marriage, the registration of marriage is a function of the government.
Yes.
Church offers a blessing. But in Kenya, we had gotten used to our pastors also being given privileges to work as deputy registrars of marriage.
Yes.
But if you talk to any pastor now who used to do marriages in the 80s and the 90s, and they have to do marriages now, it's a different kettle of fish. Bring your certificate so we can go with it. They can verify it is legitimate so that they can come back. So they can show us the copy of the certificate we'll actually set so that we can go back and where it's become a song.
Yes.
To do. And so you find there are many Christians, by the way, who are getting married clandestinely, because you get to a place where those ins and outs are so many. Your marriage date arrives, you still haven't finished what the government is asking. So the pastor is like, look, let's just go ahead to Shikanisha, we bless you. We back here chasing
the legal
Sharia house.
Yes, yes.
Because it's become such a pain. But did we have power to resist that? No. So we have to come back to a place where, and that's why you find that in this particular conversation with Shakahola, one of the things that the terms of references are is looking at the legal provisions of how religious institutions are operating and making recommendations. And one of the strong recommendations that must come from this process is that religious institutions have to be removed from the Societies Act.
Okay.
And given their own special house, where what we lost in the previous constitution can at least be enshrined in statute. So that we have a law now protecting religious institutions, but not just that, creating the parameters within which we must operate, so that anyone operating outside that, therefore, you can deal with them as the criminals that they are. Because that's what's missing now. There's no Chinese wall between us as religious institutions, the Societies Act, and any other societies that exist out there.
So, historically, is it just the Societies Act that has been responsible in trying to govern the religious bodies? Or do we have other acts? Because I'm thinking one of the conversations we had, specifically Shakahola issue, is where is the penal code? Doesn't it apply?
It does.
Okay, then what other acts, if there are, that, you know, any lawyer or the government would use to help and govern the church?
You know, all the laws of Kenya apply to all of us equally.
Yes.
So, the laws on noise, NEMA, is applicable.
Yes.
When we are building, the construction laws are applicable.
Yes.
When you're dealing with people in the church, you've employed people, the employment laws are applicable. When you're dealing with people, sexual offenses laws are applicable. Every single piece of law is applicable. The penal code is applicable. Simply because your church does not exempt you from operating under the rest of the laws. So that's why even with Shakahola, the emphasis is this was criminal activity. The government has got the power to investigate and to punish criminal activity. They should kindly go ahead and proceed and do that without vilifying the rest of the church. Because from where I stand, even the Shakahola situation being a church is questionable, because what was that?
Okay.
So in instances where there's manifest illegality or something going on, the government still has full power and full purview to apply every law in the land. Are you evading taxes? Are you laundering money? What are you doing in your church that is not within the protection of the law? The law should come against you hammer and tongs.
Okay.
There's no protection because you're the church. The scrutiny now is, in this dispensation that we're in, the scrutiny is open for everybody. So for example, once upon a time, church finances were basically the secret of the pastor, and if he had a treasurer, maybe it was his wife. And people used to operate mom and pop churches like that, where there's zero transparency. If you try to do that now, you find, by the way, you'll fall foul of the law. Something like, for example, data protection. And this is an area that the churches need to become alive to and awake to. If you take people's data, you're a church, you're recording people in the congregation and you're doing whatnot, there has to be signs to tell people this is going to be a recorded service that will be televised. If you do not want to appear on TV, don't sit in this congregation, because
joy.
Yes, because if somebody finds themselves wametokelezea kwa TV and maybe they were not aware that they were going to be on TV and they did not want to be found because they're hiding from somebody, it can become an issue. It can become a problem.
Are you serious?
Yes. All these laws are still applicable
to
the church as much as they're applicable to the next guy. But like I said, we're still in a dispensation of grace where these things are not yet a problem.
Yes.
But very soon there will come a Pharaoh who will not know Joseph.
My goodness. I hope, pastors, you're watching and you're listening. I can see you, Apostle Charles Ndonga. I can see Pastor Hannah. I see all of you that are here tuned in as we have this very robust conversation. Did you hear about the data protection thing? You know, I think ignorance is going to beat us. But hey, we're being educated. We're being informed. Kindly continue sharing this stream. Let them know we're talking about church regulation and we're looking at it from the legal perspective. Joy, so we are talking about where the rain started beating us. We moved to 2014, and then the Attorney General Emeritus, Githu Muigai, has a raft of proposals towards the regulation of the church. Why are you privy to that document, and why didn't it pass? What was the issue? Did we confront it?
You're dating yourself, and I'm dating myself in this conversation. Because are you privy? I was one of the instigators of rejecting the same.
Yes.
Because it was an attempt to bring in some church regulation, but without adequate statutory protection for the churches.
Okay.
Because what it was being brought under the Societies Act. And like I said, the Societies Act is a very big umbrella act.
Yes.
All the societies that want to be registered have to fit in there somehow. So there's nothing specific to the protection of religious institutions in the Societies Act. But with the introduction of the associations bill, then there were, in fact, it wasn't even a bill first. There was sort of like, he was going to introduce regulations under the act that was to affect religious institutions.
Okay.
And it was very far-reaching. You had to collect the data of all your members and keep it. When a member left your church, you had to update the register that they have left. let's just use our Pentecostal setup, where we don't really have church members. People attend and not attend as and when they feel like.
Yes.
People move from one estate to another and they stop attending one church and start attending another. There's no real reason why are they no longer a member. Most of us don't even have a proper members register. So that was going to be required. We're going to be required to publish our financials, display them in a prominent place, and many other things that were very far-reaching, but without adequate statutory protection, where now the church knew, okay, this is where I'm protected. So if I'm doing this, this information will be used for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it can't be used for this. So it was going to be a lot of information required of us, a lot of responsibility put on us, and not just Christians, all religious institutions, but without commensurate protection.
Yes.
And so we said, first and foremost, people sitting in Sharia house will not tell churches how to operate because they cannot understand the dynamics of how churches operate.
Yes.
So the notion that a registrar could sit at their desk and just receive your application and papers and then decide whether or not you're in good standing, that is something that we totally rejected. Secondly, the fact that the genesis of the laws was from the Attorney General without the participation of any religious institutions meant that it was written with the perspective of the regulator without any conversation from the regulated. And at this point in time, rightfully so, the regulated were way more affected than the regulator. So we're like, we know what you're trying to do. You want to clamp down on terrorism and extremism and whatnot, but you should have had that conversation. It should have been a two-way conversation before we agree on a set of rules.
Yes.
The other thing was, we had been agitating since 2010 past. We have been agitating for a religious freedom bill to be tabled so that religious institutions are protected, because it's not just us, it's all the religious institutions. So for example, soon after we rejected those rules, Professor Githu went ahead and issued a moratorium on the registration of churches. That moratorium was not, it wasn't even written. He did it by mouth. He said, don't register any more churches until you sort this out.
Yeah.
It took President Kenyatta just the last day before he left office to also use his word to lift that moratorium. That was a dispensation of almost from 2014, when you couldn't register a church at the word of a man.
Yes.
So we got into a place where we were being squeezed into a corner, people insisting that we have to get this done. So it became urgent that this must get done. Now, the unfortunate situation is that in this dispensation where we are, the changing governments and the changing, every time we make progress, there's changes. So Githu left. So whatever progress we had made with him was lost. Came in Ejikihara. We did not advance that conversation very far with him. He left. And so now we have the third bite at this cherry.
Yes.
To see if maybe government and religious institutions can have that conversation, and based on that conversation can come up with something that is agreed. And that is why for me the task force is actually a God-sent opportunity, because this is the place where we can put in as much input as possible to make sure that by the time whatever recommendations are coming out of it, because there will be recommendations,
yes,
that they will have enough input that whatever is generated will be acceptable to both sides, that it will offer enough protection to the religious institutions, but enough comfort to the government that they're doing something about religious extremism, about terrorism, about proselytizing, about abuse of children, about other abuses that we have seen, like of vulnerable people, of
yes,
sick and disabled people.
Yes.
So I'm hoping this is the time when that conversation will be had.
Well, we are taking a short break. I know you're listening and listening very hard. Please share. These are serious issues that affect the church, that affect how we do church. And we will be back to dig deeper into this matter. Don't go anywhere.
The Standing Strong Ministers Conference 2023 on 11th July to 14th July at Kenya Cinema Plaza, Moi Avenue, Nairobi. The conference will be hosted by Apostle David and Pastor Sunday Juma.
May the Lord open a way for you. Remove any limitation.
There is something more that I am looking for. I want to know another existence.
Guest ministers, Bishop Kefa Omai from Kenya.
Child of God, you need the grace of God in your life.
Apostle John Ali from Australia.
Don't let God give you no for an answer until you get this breakthrough.
Reverend John T. L. Mashbach from Netherlands.
This is God Almighty, the creator of the heavens and the earth.
And Bishop Thomas Mude from Kenya.
All of us have something that God wants us to do.
There will be morning sessions from 9:30 a.m. to 12:45 p.m. Afternoon sessions from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Apostolic Clinic from 3 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. and open sessions from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. Check out our social media platforms or contact 0719 66 66 55 for registration and more details. You're welcome to join us in person or tune in to Elevate TV, the premier Christian television network. Standing Strong Ministers Conference 2023. The conference for every church leader.
And we are back. I hope you didn't go anywhere. We're here with Joy Mdivo, an advocate of the High Court, and she's a member of many other boards that we're not going to mention. You just check out her LinkedIn profile and you'll know who she is. I know I'm setting you up.
I know.
We have a very robust conversation here. We're looking at church regulation from a legal perspective. So many things that she has mentioned that are really worth our attention. And I hope the church is listening. By the way, Joy, when we talk about church regulation, really, is it really church regulation or just basically religions?
No, it is religious regulation, because whatever comes out of the task force,
yes,
is not just applicable to churches, is applicable to all religious institutions. And if you look at the composition of the task force, it will let you know that, because there's Hindu representation, there is a representation of the Muslims, the Christians as well, and then you've got now legal scholars and other people. So you can tell it's meant to be an all-inclusive process. So it's not just for the church, it's for all religious institutions.
Wow, brilliant. So the recommendation, let's pick it up from there, that we are strongly advancing, is that we need to annex the religious groups from the Societies Act so that it's an independent unit, so to speak, to govern matters of religion.
Yes, that there's a law that is specifically crafted for religious institutions, paying in mind their specific nuances and their sensitivities and their sensibilities. So for example, in the Religious Freedom Bill that we are mooting with the Evangelical Alliance, one of the things that we suggested was registering churches or religious institutions needs to remain a purview of the government.
Yes.
The government is the one that should always decide, am I giving this guy a certificate or not? That's up to them. But what the government can do is work with the religious institutions to find out who needs a certificate or not.
Yes.
So one of the ways that has been mooted to do that is by the government having more direct control of umbrella bodies than of individual congregations. So for example, if the government says for you to become an umbrella body, this is the threshold, this is the standard that we hope that you can uphold. You can have this number of officials, this is the sort of officials we're looking at, we want this level, so that the umbrella body standard is very high, and then the umbrella body can aspire to that. Then under the umbrella bodies, then you tell them anybody who becomes your member has to adhere maybe to a code of conduct or to certain parameters, so much like what clubs do.
Yes.
So that you tell people, for you to belong, these are our expectations of you. And this is the disciplinary function that the umbrella body can do. So for example, something like doctrine. It's not Sharia House that is going to examine doctrine.
Yes.
Your umbrella body is one that can call you and say, by the way, I was told these things that you're saying, where are they in the Bible? If we don't see like we agree with what you're saying, we tell you, brother, I don't think we can work with you because we are not agreeing.
Yes.
And so you exit our umbrella body. So if you're not able to find another umbrella body to take you in, then now you and the government can deal ana kwa ana. But for most of the religious institutions belong to NAMLEF or SUPKEM or EAK or NCCK or Clergy Accord or Congress, so that you have a fellowship of peers.
Yes.
Who can also be used for disciplinary purposes, for counseling purposes, for dispute resolution.
Yes.
So that's what we are mooting, like in the Religious Freedom Bill. But the other thing that we are mooting is that in doing that, then also the government steps back from, for example, the micromanaging that we're doing with the marriages, for example. In fact, my advice to many of the men of God, this is not a function that you must do.
Yeah.
You be the blesser of marriages. But if people want to get a certificate, let them just get it at Sharia house.
Yeah.
Because the way it has been done now, the government is using the churches to do a function for which it should be paying you.
Yes.
Because it is the work of a deputy registrar.
Yes, yes.
But we do it for free. Not only that, we even pay for the books, we pay for the licenses. But if we give that function back to government, tell them, you know what, you deal with all marriages, register them. Once you register them, they come to us for the blessing.
Yes.
Because what that does, it separates functions and allows you to have some latitude. So in the Religious Freedom Bill, there's that discussion of even places that we sponsor. If it is a school or it is a hospital, because in the previous constitution, it just dealt with places of education.
Yes.
But now we wanted it expanded to places that we sponsor. If it's a children's home or it's a hospital or it's a university or whatever it is, as long as it is being wholly sponsored by a religious institution, the element of allowing us to propagate our religion through our institutions must remain.
Yes.
Because we're helping the government to fulfill a specific function. But at the same time, Kenyans have the freedom to seek the same service elsewhere.
Yes.
It's not like we are the sole providers. So in the place where we have decided we want to train our own exclusive Muslim leaders, allow us to do that.
Yes.
Without forcing us to bring in other people if we do not want to. Because it is something that's supposed to be us to the world. This era of inclusivity, accommodating anything and everybody, in my opinion, is an excuse to ensure that those of us who have had a comparative advantage don't have it anymore. Why I'm saying a comparative advantage is some of our schools were known to have the best performing education because some of those things that we were doing actually set us above the others.
Yes.
The extreme discipline that we found in some of these Catholic schools actually aided them in performing very well. And the children, so you'd find parents want to take their children there because there's a certain dynamic that was there that was not in, say, in public schools. Now, rather than learning from it, you want to now make them public schools. What happens is that dilution. That is part of the reason why you see schools like Nairobi School, Lanana School, Dagoretti High, Alliance. These were all Christian schools that were established by people of faith, established on some roots, on some foundations that made them excel. By the government taking it away, they're not being more inclusive. They're breaking down the fabric of what made them excel.
Yes.
By allowing us to go back there is not stealing from Kenyans. It is bringing something back that we are losing.
Yes.
So that discussion has to be had.
Absolutely.
And I'm hoping in whatever bill that comes out, whatever suggestions come out from the task force, it will take into account that we want, yes, to protect the faith,
yes,
but we also want to give government something back. And in the same vein, now Shakahola specifically.
Yes.
When you've got people in your midst who cannot fit in any umbrella body, they don't want to be guided by anyone.
Yes.
Then those are the places where the government should offer the first scrutiny to see what is it exactly that makes this person unable to, because religion by definition is a community thing.
Yes. Yes.
It's something that draws others together and several people work together. So if you find somebody who's claiming to be a religious person but cannot sit with other men of God, cannot sit with other sheikhs, cannot sit with other gurus, cannot sit with, he's a guru by himself, it becomes a red flag, because we're not saying that they'll be deregistered, but before the government deregisters them, they can shine a torch there, because they need to find out, you if you're in an umbrella body, I know the umbrella body is self-cleaning.
Yes.
But if you're by yourself, then the registrar knows that is the place I need to look even closer.
Yes.
So these characters will be isolated, and they can be dealt with more directly than when they're given the protection of the other religious institutions.
Okay.
So it's a symbiotic relationship.
Absolutely. Now that we're talking about church regulation or religious regulation, we're focusing more on the extremist groups and entities. Let's look at finance, church groups, religious organizations, and money. Does that bill propose ways to manage that or regulate that aspect of, engagement with the church?
Okay, so in the bill that we were mooting, there is the requirement or the proposal that the churches be required to every year have an auditor come in and do audit of their accounts, and they keep those records.
Okay.
There is no need for the same to be published, and the reason for that was simple. Well, like, not all churches have got the, and I'm saying this with a lot of humility because I don't have any other English for it, have got the shareholder mentality that the people have given and they need to know how much they gave and where it went.
Yes.
There's some churches whose constitutions require that.
Yes.
And so you'll see churches that will hold AGMs and will make this information public. But there are other congregations where maybe the pastor himself, the capacity is
He's
low.
the Alpha and Omega.
Yeah, or he's the be all and end all, or maybe his capacity is low, he can't even do it.
Yes.
Maybe even he himself needs assistance with that. But make sure that your accounts are always audited.
Yes.
Why? Is because one of the new phenomena that the government is trying to fight is money laundering through churches.
Yes.
Because it's something that has developed in recent past, where people would come and pretend like they are contributing to your church building, or they are contributing to your children's home, and they put in 100 million.
Yes.
And take out 95
Okay.
and launder it.
Okay.
So your church accounts are used to launder money.
Yes.
Now you could be doing it thinking it's a very innocent venture, but unless you have experts to tell you, by the way, this is not how it usually happens, you find as a pastor you're exposed. So there's the need for that provision. In an umbrella body situation, for example, if there's a code of conduct, they could decide, by the way, as guys, the people who are in this particular umbrella body, we have a common auditor, or we've got a common system that we use. We use the SAGE, or we are using this, so that all the church member, the churches that are affiliated to know the fiscal management. Why? Because this has also been a major area of criticism of churches, that we are not financially transparent.
Yes.
I've grown up in church. I mean, one of the arguments for that is that who was asking Samuel how much he's making, how much is coming in. You used to take the spear and put it in the burnt offerings, and the one you come up with, that was dinner for the day.
Yes.
But we've come a long way from that. Right now, most pastors are on a straight salary. They pay as you earn.
Yes.
The people who work in church are also on a straight salary. They also pay as you earn. If the church has got some income generating activity, they pay taxes on that.
Yes.
Because what you collect in church as donations is tax exempt, but what you generate in your local M-Pesa shop or your bookshop, that should be declared separately and taxes paid on that.
Yeah.
So there is need to incorporate more professionalism in the financial management of churches, because that's an area that has also been a big pain point coming up till now. And it's not just for the government. Even the members themselves, they keep complaining because they feel like with what we donate, we should be making a lot more progress, and we don't seem to be making progress. I leave people to their theology when it comes to that, but it is a valid concern. And if those are the people you shepherd, you need to have an answer.
Yeah, so 2014, there was a lot of noise on fake miracles and the 310 manenos. Because we're talking about the finance, does that regulation deal with the aspects of extortion? In the sense that people are being hoodwinked to contribute or give their money to a particular man of God in return for a miracle or something, a breakthrough in life. Does then do the proposals that we have a way of managing that kind of scenario, or is it a purely spiritual issue?
No, let's separate issues here.
Yes.
when you're a genuine servant of God and you're called to serve people, you do it with integrity of heart and to the best of your ability.
Yes.
When you have seen church as a business opportunity and you've come into it to con people, then that is not church.
Okay.
That is not within the ambit of our protection. That falls under the penal code.
Yes.
That's what we talked about earlier. That things people do that even if you look for the doctrine, it doesn't exist. So it doesn't matter that he calls it a church. It's not a church. It is something totally different. And for such one, they stand over there like Korah. When the earth opens, they are just swallowed with their madness, because it goes both ways. That man of God selling, oil and brooms and other things. If as a congregant, that thing works for you, and you willingly part with your money, then there was no extortion. You are a man with all your senses. You left the house, took a matatu, came and sat here quietly for an hour and a half, and you felt convinced to do this. The law protects your freedom of conscience to say, and once you do it, you felt that you got something back. It was value for your money. Then there is nothing the rest of us, even if we look at it and we say, silly Wesley. If Wesley feels that he has gotten something out of it,
yes,
who are we to say that he didn't? But on the other hand, if somebody has told you, oh, I see this, like you remember that time when you're saying about the fake miracles, they are shown how the fake miracles are done. Those people who go after it, it wasn't written in scripture. In the last days, people will be following after such. They'll be wanting those people to eat. So there are some of these things that are done where we can't really protect you if you've refused to elevate your spiritual discernment to a level where you can tell that this is not a real man of God. And unfortunately, it's like betting. You can throw your bets into a certain thing, thinking one day it will come. But even if it doesn't come, they'll tell you it was a game of chance, wasn't it? Did you get it or did you not get it? Well, the odds were just against you. That's the same way with these kubahatisha miracles.
Yes.
So can you really legislate against them? No, because it's a sort of thing where if it was done willing participants, eyes wide open, I made no promises. I just told him if he believes this will happen. Maybe he didn't believe enough. As others, we can't protect you from that level of extortion. What can be done is something that is manifestly illegal. So like what we're seeing in Shakahola, you tell somebody, go sell everything, come give me everything, and then you starve here until you go and see Jesus.
Yes.
That is obviously illegal. But this one's what I told you, no, tukipanda mbegu ya 15. I mean, if you are the kind of person who wants instant noodles, miracles, utakula indomie mpaka ufike binguni.
Now, strictly speaking, because you're saying selling handkerchiefs, selling anointing oil, selling, is that taxable? Could it be considered as business?
You know, most of that is done in the guise of, it's not done as selling, it is done as, if you express your faith to this level, then your faith will come back in this level.
Kuinua's dabiu.
Yes. And so it comes in the realm of now the donations that are given church, like in offerings and in tithes and in others. So it's sort of protected. But when it comes to obvious merchandising, like now if Elevate TV starts selling these mugs, this is obvious merchandising. So that is different. So that's where the line is drawn.
Brilliant. Let's move away from the finance aspect. And I really hope you're listening and getting a lot of information and getting a lot of counsel and advice. I also challenge you to do your research. Joy is telling us we need to increase our level of spiritual discernment. We also need to increase our level of knowledge. Absolutely. So that we are not caught, you know, for lack of a better expression, pants down. Anyway, let's go to matters of qualifications. Qualification of ministers and clergy. One of the proposals there was that you must have a certificate of training from a recognized, institution of higher learning or whatever. How do you bring that to, to be enforced, especially looking at the context of church within setup Kenya?
Now, once the moratorium was lifted, you'll find that we have really struggled to have churches registered because of that provision.
Yes.
Because they say of your registered officials, at least one person should have a certificate of theological training from a recognized institution.
Yes.
Certificate is shida. Recognized institution does shida.
I know.
Because some of the institutions are online.
Yes.
Some of them were, you know, some Bible school that you did for 1 week in Cameroon.
Yes. So
it's become difficult for the institution to be, and some of the training was done a long time ago, so maybe the school even folded, or it's no longer there. Doesn't mean while it was there, it wasn't a legit school, just that it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And so the registrar has been using that as the stumbling block to stop registration of churches because of this particular qualification. Now, in my considered opinion, and having my experience as a believer, I know that God qualifies the chosen.
Yes.
He calls you and he qualifies you. So there are some people who've not had a lot of book learning.
Yes.
But God has given them such grace that they're able to minister at very high levels.
Yes.
And I've sat under the ministry of many men of God who did not darken the door of a university, but are ministering powerfully today. The difference, I think, has come with where we are as a society. We value papers these days. It says something that you bothered to better yourself and to take yourself further. So that has become the stumbling block. My encouragement has been, like, even when you're talking about using umbrella bodies or using associations, is for you to register something that is maybe TVET accredited.
Yes.
That a pastor can do and get that certificate, and that suffices. Because you give to God what is God's, but you give to Caesar what is Caesar. If Caesar wants to see a paper, find a paper to show Caesar. Because at the end of the day, what does it harm? It only adds to your knowledge. Maybe you're not very academically gifted.
Yes.
The requirement is that somebody in your group must have some.
Okay.
So even if it is not you as the vision bearer, have 1 or 2 people who have done this on your behalf. The reason I think it's a useful suggestion is because also people have used that ignorance to take advantage also of men of God.
Yes.
Because, you know, he's not very sharp in these other things. And you find people who use a genuine man of God, sit under his grace, and they do things that are underhanded ukuchini, knowing very well that the vision bearer might not catch on to what they're doing. So sometimes having a level of that protection is useful. But should it be mandatory? I don't think it should be mandatory. Because, like I have said, it is a function of grace. But when it comes to, when the rubber meets the road, I think us as religious institutions, as EAK, as NCCK, as we should have at least one accredited course attached maybe to one of our universities, where our pastors can go for 2 months or 3 months, come out with a certificate in this and that, and have the basics covered. Basic HR, basic finance, basic admin, you know, just big picture, so that even if you're running a church, you've got an idea of how these other processes are running. So people are not also running circles around you.
Yeah.
So it would be beneficial in my opinion, but should it be mandatory? I do not think so.
Okay. As a sitting member of the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya, sitting board member, who has been the biggest headache in trying to come up with these regulations and to help the church to position itself in such a way that we don't affect the future or the prosperity of the church in the coming years?
We had our AGM 2 weeks ago, so I've already exited the board. They have new legal counsel now. Yes, yes, I have.
All right.
So now they have my senior actually in the profession. It's called Beatrice Kitui. She's the new legal in the board of the EAK.
Yes.
But poor men and beggars you shall always have with you. Hakuna mali nimeenda. But I wouldn't call it a biggest headache. It's just been the ducks have just not been aligning. Because there are times when the government is very enthusiastic about it, and so we run into the government and try and light that fire.
Yes.
Then we come to our people and they're not really feeling it. Then there's something that comes out, and now it's the EAK that is really up in arms. We really must get this show on the road. And you go to government and they're like, maybe we can look into it. Leave it with me. I'll get back to you.
Yes.
So in my opinion, it's just not, the timing has just not gelled. But what Shakahola has done, it has precipitated a crisis where both the church and the government were in desperate need to deal with this thing.
Yes.
And so I find this to be a Kairos moment where the resources and the time and the opportunity has been put for all of us to sit together and crack this code. So as far as I'm concerned, for me, it's an answer to prayer, because
yes,
I've been engaged in this from the beginning.
Yes.
So from 2002 is when we've been trying to, with the previous Orange Banana Katiba Manenos, that's why we started with protecting this religious freedom. So this, for me, is an opportunity for us to bring to fruition so that we have the religious freedom protected. We have got people who are not in religious purview. We have a way of isolating them and leaving them open for the government to deal directly with them. So that you've got the Noah's Ark of umbrella institutions, or church council, Hindu council, Muslim council, whatever we're going to call them.
Yes.
So that you've got people who are willing to submit to that protected, in that ark. But the ones who are not can stay there and let the rain beat them from the government direct.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that this time round, all the headaches that have been here and there, everybody has the same headache. And the solution is only one. We have to come up with a specific law governing religious institutions. And in that specific law governing religious institutions, then the protections for religious institutions must be included. And the exclusions of those who do not want to be under that umbrella should be made, such that either you keep operating as a society, even if you call yourself a religious institution, then you become answerable directly to the people at Sharia house. And however they deal with you, they deal with you. The rest of us don't get. Because I'll tell you something.
Yes.
When you're seeing people who are offering fake miracles and whatnot, and then they keep saying, where are the other churches? Why can they not tell these people up? Those guys are not interested in being in fellowship.
Yes.
I've been in situations where we are like, okay, let's reach out to this brother, find out how we can assist him. And he tells you point blank, I am not a brother, I am in business.
Yes.
I have seen them openly tell you, what you guys are doing and what I'm doing is leave it to mbili tofauti. You people are preaching the gospel, me I'm looking for rent.
Yes.
And that's why you can find somebody can go to prison, come out of prison and do the exact same thing.
Yes.
Because that's
a shara for them.
For him it's a hassle.
Yes.
And so such fellows should be left isolated.
Yes.
Because even if you say churches need to be regulated, that's not a church.
Yes.
That's a business. And it's a completely different animal. And so time to separate. The wheat and the tares have grown up together for a long time. It's time for us to separate them.
At least attempt to do so. In your opinion, Joy, are we listening? Is the church listening? And especially from where I see it, charismatic Pentecostals, evangelicals, are we listening?
Now I'm seeing a lot more responsiveness than before. For a long time, to be honest, I kept feeling like we give counsel. Sometimes it's taken, oftentimes it's ignored. And the problem now happens when something like this explodes. It becomes, okay, now how do we get out of this? Sometimes we feel like telling the men of God, but I told you. But you ought to have listened. And you know now you can't do that.
Yes.
So I'm seeing a lot more responsiveness. Even now, when the task force is going round, the pastors are coming out in large numbers. They're engaging robustly. They're writing memoranda. They are turning up for the hearings. They're making oral presentations. And for me, that is very encouraging. Because up to the run-up of the 2010 Constitution, one of the things that the commission were telling us was that everywhere they went, the Muslim groups had organized themselves, and there was always somebody to stand up and speak in support of the Qadi court, to speak in support of the Qadi court, to speak in support of. So wherever they went in the country, they had a report from that section that said, and the Muslims in that area were in support of the Qadi court.
Wow.
But the churches, you want one statement to be issued from the EAK headquarters, and that's it. They are not engaging in the grassroots. This time around, I'm seeing something different. Everywhere they're going in the grassroots, the pastors at the grassroots level are organizing. So they would call and say, Joy, give us guidance. Now, I try not to put my thinking into their thinking. So I tell them, these are the guiding parameters, these are the terms of reference. Try and craft your response like this. Because I want the wisdom of the pastors to come through. Because the temptation, as people who think you have a bit of learning, is to spoon feed them and tell them, here's a memorandum here, go present it. But this time around, that's not what I've done. If somebody asks me, what do you want? I tell them, these are the terms of reference. This is where you should be looking at the responses. Please go ahead and craft something. And they've risen to the challenge. So are they listening? I'm seeing a lot more responsiveness this time around. And I'm very encouraged because even the testimony from the members of the task force who are bishops are saying, when we go out, we are seeing our pastors coming out in the numbers and they're engaging. And so if the task force is coming to an area near you and you're a man of God, a woman of God, you, even if you're a believer just like me, but you've got something to say, go sit down in the audience, put up your hand, stand up and say your piece. Because whatever you say is feeding into what the final document will be. So there's no opinion that is invalid. Whichever way the opinion goes, there's no opinion that is invalid.
Wow, Joy, we're out of time. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you
I hope to have you again. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was it. This is just a teaser. It is to provoke our thinking. It is to arouse our interest in these matters. The Lord truly bless you. Have an awesome week. I have been your host, Apostle John Wesley. We'll see you again next Friday. Mbarikiwe sana hadi mshangae.